John Winchester's a raggedy bitch. Hello, and welcome to Super Hell, aka the Mystery Spotcast, a show where two recovering Supernatural fans subject themselves to a rewatch so no one else ever has to watch Supernatural again. My name is Ollie. I use any pronouns, and you can find me on social media at OllieFresh. That's fresh with a PH.
And my name is Klaudia. My pronouns are she, her, and you can find me on social media at Klaudia says, K-A-L-U-D-I-A says. This week we have two episodes that we are delving into childhood trauma with Dean and Sam once again, and then we have a Monster of the Week that is another one of those season one establishing the lore kind of episodes. We got some meat on the bones this week.
Oh yeah, absolutely. These are, once again, I feel like I've said it for quite a few times. I keep being shocked when the episodes are good.
Yeah. Oh my god, just like Star Wars. We said this this past week when we were talking about the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and I did say something similar where I was like, I am often shocked when it's just good and I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
So yeah, this first episode is called Something Wicked, and the tagline is, a battle with a witch takes Dean back to the day when he almost lost Sam, which is very funny because, as we will find out in the show, he loses Sam many a time.
Yeah, the one time that he has that he's like, oh, what happened to Sam? Girly, you have a big storm coming.
Yeah, there's a lot of watching this show, but also just the early parts of the show is, honey, you got a big storm coming.
No, it really, they say a lot of stuff in these episodes where I'm like, oh, darling, oh, my dear, oh, you've just said something that you don't know how relevant this is about to be.
Yeah, so this one has a really good cold open, and I often will start these episodes and I'll be like, oh, what episode is this, whatever, and then there'll be a certain shot and I'll be like, oh, I remember this one, and then I immediately did. So we are in Wisconsin, and there's this girl, she's like saying her prayers before bed, and her dad is like, hey, mommy's not coming home, she's going to be at the hospital with your sister. And he says goodnight and he leaves, and the little girl wakes up in her bed because there was like tree branches banging on her window, and this is the shot that I remembered.
Because I will say this is one of those things that as a child I was so afraid of, and
Literally.
Seeing it made me be like, oh, this is what all of my childhood fears are.
Yeah, I was afraid. I was legitimately afraid of this episode when I first saw it. She's creeped out, so she gets out of bed and she closes the blinds. This little girl is way braver than I would ever be. And she goes back to bed, and then we see this, like, long, thin hand, creepy skeletal hand, come open her bedroom window, and then this shadowy Dementor Emperor Palpatine looking ass.
No, literally, the amount of times where I was like, oh my god, what? Just like... He a lot. Like, he literally looks just like Palpatine. It's ridiculous.
The little girl, like, rolls over, and basically his mouth kind of glows white. It's very Dementor-like, very Ring Wraith-like. And he, like, hisses at her, and she lets out a scream. And it's basically that he has attacked this little girl. And then we shift to the highway. Some tunes are playing.
Yes, let's go.
Yeah.
Road trip.
That's this whole fucking show.
This show is the worst road trip imaginable.
Yeah, basically. And Sam and Dean, they're in the Impala, and they're following some coordinates that their dad sent them. So when we last left them, they were with their dad, and then they were like, oh, this demon is gonna get our ass if we stay with our dad, so we gotta leave. It was kind of whatever. So
sad.
Because their dad is ex-military,
Slay.
Yeah, he sends them things and coordinates all the time, but like doesn't explain things to them. I'm like, what the fuck? It's very totally spies of
Listen, I hate to say this sentence, but in defense of John Winchester. No, and listen, this is not really, but I'm saying it kind of makes sense that he would just send coordinates, and then because they have his journal, they can figure it out from there. Because I'm like,
you can't just send a text.
No, I agree, but I'm also like, knowing how paranoid John Winchester is, and to be fair, that paranoia has sometimes saved his ass. So I'm like, I kind of get it that he's not like, hey, my two beautiful children who I care about, here's where to go and here's what to do when you get there, because I do fear that they would be like,
They would be following me and my
someone
children.
would follow them.
Yeah, but it is weird to me. And I'm like, he picks now is the time. We will find out later why he has chosen to give them these specific coordinates. But I'm like,
Yeah.
why is he choosing to send them on this mission now?
No, I'm like, literally, I mean, I think part of it is just like, this is when this issue has emerged.
Yeah. So,
But we'll talk about it.
yeah. As we've kind of seen in a lot of episodes with a lot of these monsters of the week, there's a timing to it. Like a monster becomes active again. They feed every couple of years in a certain area, whatever. This is a very common thing in Supernatural. So they get these coordinates and they do their usual, like, are we sure this is a supernatural thing? And Sam's like, yeah, it is. And Sam finds nothing when he searches the net. I like when they call it the net.
Well, so
and they're like, this has got to be a bust.
yeah, they are really like, they're at the library. They are like driving. They're like, there is not, like, what is happening? There is nothing.
Yeah. So they stop to go get some coffee, and Sam enters his fucking. I was
quickly
gonna say Sherlock Holmes era.
Quickly, what is their coffee orders? What are their coffee orders, do you think?
Okay,
because
so
canonically in the episode they both get a hot coffee, but I think that toxic masculinity is in play here. I want to know what you think they would like.
So I think that at every place, Dean orders like a coffee black, but he hates that shit. So then he'll like go around the corner and he'll put whatever like the fruitiest like creamer in it. So he like pours like a ton of like hazelnut or hazelnut creamer in it. So he's like, yeah, I get my coffee black, and then he's just like poured as much like fake ass creamer or whatever, because they're usually not at a great place. Sam, like, as we see in the series, a fun thing that we see is that like Sam tries to like eat healthier more, or just like eat things that are not crap all the time. And he's like, yeah, we're always like on the road and like eating like shit. Like, I'd like to like eat a salad sometimes. So I think that Sam, like, not that he doesn't want to drink coffee, but like I think Sam just has like a normal fucking order.
Sam is getting like
a flat white. If he's going to Starbucks.
Oh, are you kidding? Sam is absolutely ordering a flat white.
Yeah.
I think I feel like Dean is like, he's ordering a black coffee, but I feel like his real order is he always sees someone getting a mocha cookie crumble frappuccino, and he's always like, I want that so bad.
Or he gets shots of espresso straight and drinks them iced, so that he can be like, oh yeah, I'm doing the manly thing and I'm drinking just straight shots, but really it's because he wants to have an iced coffee because he's gay.
Yeah, so he wants to order an iced Americano so bad, but he's too afraid to ask them to put that extra water in there.
He's struggling.
The toxic masculinity, in case you couldn't tell, is beating his ass.
Literally and figuratively. So basically they get their coffee, and across the street there's a playground, and Sam enters his fucking Sherlock Holmes era. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry for saying
Sherlock
that.
Holmes is slay. We're not talking about BBC Sherlock. Regular Sherlock, you were my bestie.
Yeah, he enters his Thrawn era, and and Sam is like, okay, did we notice anything that's weird here? And Dean's like, no. And Sam's like, yeah, so what's weird is that it's 4:00 and there's no kids on this fucking playground, like, on a weekday. What's going on here? And they already have been tipped off that there's something weird, so they're like, So there's this one mom with this one kid on the playground, and they go to talk to the mom, and they're like, hey, like, whatever. And she mentions that there has been a recent, like, outbreak of illness that's been affecting, like, all of the kids, and the parents are getting scared because it's spreading. This was very weird to watch now in the modern day.
Yeah, it was so upsetting. I'm also like, oh my gosh, big shock. I don't really love when children are in peril. So
yeah,
this is like,
what this episode is about.
Yeah, it's literally an episode about illness and about children being in peril, and I'm like, oh, this episode was made to be uncomfortable to me specifically.
Yeah. But also, like, parents actually caring if their children get a mysterious disease. Wow. Imagine. Sam and Dean, they go to a hospital, and they're in these, like, dorky little suits. Okay. They're pretending to be people from the CDC. And they...
Dr. Fauci ass.
Yeah, Sam is cosplaying as Dr. Fauci.
The Faucification.
um okay, so this part is one of those parts where it's like, who were you writing this show for? Because it suddenly enters like, ha ha ha, we're dudes time, and but it just comes off as Dean trying so hard to be straight that it's camp, but like camp in a bad way.
It really is like they wrote toxic masculinity so hard. They tried to make him so masculine that they turned it around the other way.
And that's the whole show.
No, unfortunately it is. Sorry, guys.
So they're walking in, and Sam is like, the fucking fake ID you gave me, my title on it says bikini inspector. And Dean's like, oh, it's funny. They don't even like check your ID that close. It's funny. And Sam's like, are you fucking joking? Like, what's wrong with you? So Sam has to go up to the desk and go up to this nurse at the desk and be like, hey, I'm from the CDC. And she's like, can I see some ID? And he's like, fuck.
He holds it up. This scene is hilarious.
Winchester privilege comes back in, and he holds it up for like 2 seconds, and then Dean's like, tee in the background. And
he holds it up. He literally goes like, oh, okay, that's enough. That's enough.
And the nurse is like, okay.
She's like, that looks legit. Go ahead in and see the sick children.
Yeah, I'm not gonna ID the other guy with you. Fuck it. And she's like, yeah, here, go to the pediatric ward. And as they're walking towards the ward, Dean passes like the open door of a patient's room, and there's this old lady in a kind of darkened room. She's sitting in a wheelchair, and then there's an inverted crucifix on the wall, and she like looks around at him very creepily, and he's like, I don't know what that's all about, but what the fuck? And I believe she's blind, or they've made it so she's like, looks like she's blind. Looks like she's blind is,
I didn't think that.
She's wearing contacts, whatever, which not all blind people have a certain look to their pupils, but they did the TV thing where they're like, her pupils are gray.
To be fair, I did watch, full disclosure, which if you're a longtime listener, you'll know, when I watch these episodes, I usually watch them at 1.5 speed. And I did also watch this episode, the first half of this episode, on my phone. So I may have missed that. So sorry, guys.
Well, her being blind actually plays into a wild moment later in the episode. So
that makes a lot more sense now that when I think about what happens, I'm like, wow, that does actually. I feel a little bit stupid right now.
So okay, it's fine. It's much like when I thought that Obi-Wan was making bricks.
that you know what though, because that was camp.
Spoilers for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but I thought that Obi-Wan was making bricks at the beginning of the episode when he was clearly working in a meat packing, not plant, but line. Anyways, RuPalp's reference. Anyways, so Sam and Dean, they meet the doctor. His name is Dr. Heidegger, and he's the doctor who's on the case. And he's like, oh, the CDC's already here. And Dean just makes up some shit. And he's like, oh, yeah, they already called us in from Georgia, whatever. No, like, okay, that was because smooth, Dean.
Yeah, and the doctor was like, oh, I was just about to call the CDC. I was just about to call the CDC, so it's nice that you guys are already here.
And the doctor's like, so here's what happens. It seems to really only affect kids. And it works through the siblings in a family. Like, once it gets to one kid, it gets to the other ones. And Dean's like, okay, can we talk to some of the kids? And the doctor and the nurse are like, they are all unconscious. No. And so like, okay, can we talk to, are there any parents here? And they're like, okay, like if you think that'll work. And another thing that he says is also, he's like, yeah, like it feels like they're losing their bodies are just like breaking down and we don't know what's wrong with them. Again, weird thing. I was like, damn, must be crazy when kids are getting sick with an illness that fucks with you in random ways. It's a bit on the nose.
It's a bit real. It's a bit real watching this episode.
Getting a bit weird. So they go and they talk to Bethany, who is, I believe, the little girl from the beginning. They talk to her father, and he's like, my other daughter, Mary, she got it first, and then Bethany got it So then Sam turns to Dean and it's like, okay, so clearly this man is not going to be home for some time, so we can break in and investigate, right? And Dean's like, yeah. And I'm like, you guys are fucked up in the head. So once they're in the house, they're looking around for clues to like, okay, like anything. They're doing the usual. They're doing the EMF. They're looking for hex bags. They're looking for all these kinds of things. And Sam looks around the window and he finds something on the windowsill. And there's this like long dinosaur ass looking creepy handprint with like long claws. It's like as if it was in the cement on the bricks.
Yeah, it's like rotted.
Yeah, and Dean and it's rotted whatever. And then Dean looks at it and has a fucking PTSD moment and has a flashback and he's like,
yeah.
He's literally having a fucking moment.
It's like this is one of the, not the first time, but this is one of our first real like flashbacks. I think we had one a couple episodes ago, but this actor who plays young Dean is so slay.
Yeah, he does come back a few times.
He does,
young Dean and young Sam.
Quite a few.
So we go to a flashback where we have a little young Dean. And this little actor, by the way, he's very slay because he gets Jensen Ackles, like, mannerisms really well.
He does, like, the way he walks.
And the way he talks.
Just
I was
like
like,
him.
Damn! So he... Basically, it flashes to a young Dean looking at a picture of this same handprint that's in John, their father's journal, and that clearly John is investigating as a part of a current hunt. And John he's packing a bag to leave, whatever, and he's like, okay, remember the rules. Like, you know, don't let anybody in, don't answer the door. You know, if I'm going to call you, I'm going to call, hang up, and then call again so that you know that it's me. And, like, if anything happens, go to Pastor Jim's house. We don't even know who that is.
Yeah, call Pastor Jim.
Call Pastor Jim. And he's like, whatever. And he's like, repeat it back to me. And then, you know, don't leave this room. And he's like, whatever you do, you have to watch out for Sammy. And poor little Dean, he's like, I don't know, he's like 10.
Yeah, maybe. Like, he's like 11 at the oldest.
Yeah,
like, he is a little guy.
Yeah, Sam is like sitting on the couch watching fucking Thundercats, and and he's like, let me leave my 10-year-old and be like, you better look out for Sammy.
No, and not only and that, and he's like, the one thing he's like, remember what I told you? And Dean is like, yeah, shoot first, ask questions later.
Like, and
I'm like, imagine saying that to a 10-year-old. John Winchester, you were fucked in the head.
Yeah, this is when the John Winchester hate kind of begins. You're like, you are a fucked up individual.
And honestly, like, here's the problem. This part, I'm like, as fucked up as it is, I'm like, okay, John Winchester is facing something that is like incredibly dangerous and incredibly evil. He can't really be like, someone else take my kids and here's why. So I'm like, okay.
But he knows other hunters.
He does. And I agree. I'm not apologizing for him, but I'm saying this part of the rationale I kind of get a little bit, but it's what happens later that I'm like, fuck you for real. And we'll get into that. But
I hate this man.
He is so, his coochie stank.
So we come back to the present and Dean is like, hey, so bad news. Our dad has faced this creature before, and he says nothing else. And he's like, clearly John sent us these coordinates because he wants us to finish the job. And Sam's like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? I don't remember any of this shit. What finish what job? What? And he's like, we gotta go. And he's like, you're not gonna tell me anything else? And like she's just like not sharing. So they go to the motel, and Dean's explaining to Sam that they were on a hunting trip of a creature called a shtriga, which is like it's an Albanian folklore legend. And he's like, yeah, my dad faced it like 17 years ago in Wisconsin, but it got away. And Sam's like, our dad doesn't really abandon a hunt. Like monsters don't really get away. Like, he keeps at it. Like, what would make him just fucking leave? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And Dean will not elaborate. So they go inside.
Like, maybe it's time that we be quiet right now, Sam.
Yeah. So they go inside, and he says to Dean, he's like, so you know all these details, but you don't know the rest? And Dean's like, nope. And he's being very odd and very weird. So they go inside and they go to check in, and they're greeted by this young boy.
This
Okay,
scene, I'm
there's
sorry.
several pieces of this.
Let me say something, just so you guys know. This is something that is so homophobic, but also looking back on it as a gay person, it's like really
doing it.
It is unfortunately like so funny, but it's also so homophobic. Like it's not good.
This child is very
This child is hilarious.
So this child is very actually like time appropriate levels of homophobic for a child that young. Like, yeah, they did go around saying that gay was an insult. So he looks at the two of them and he's like
at the hotel.
At the hotel.
Dean has walked up, and it is very funny.
He's like,
Dean walks up, and there's a child, maybe like a 12 or 13-year-old working the counter,
and the child is like, so a king or two queens? I guess two queens it is. And you're like, ah! It's homophobic, but it's also kind of funny.
No, it's so bad. It's like I'm watching this, and I had to pause because I was taken aback. And Dean is like, "Okay, you think you're funny?" And I'm like, and he is funny. I'm sorry.
It's funny. Like it's actually quite funny. This is another one of those when you're watching early 2000s television and you have like a random homophobic joke out of nowhere, and you're like, and what was that for? Like,
yeah, and you know what? I'm choosing to believe. Like, at this point, I'm like, that was camp. Like, it's also, not, but it is in my heart.
It is camp. Also, the part about this that also fucking threw me for a loop, I had to pause and take a second. The kid's name is Michael. Which, I was like, they were crazy for that. Did they do that on purpose?
Absolutely not.
I was like, So we will get into Michael, that's crazy later. But of all the names.
And you know what? It's so funny. And of all the episodes, this is the one.
Yeah. So
anyway, that's a little Easter egg for people who have already watched Supernatural.
Well, I'll get there. I'll get there when we explain Michael's significance to Sam in this episode. So this kid is homophobic to them. And then his mother comes out and is like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, my kid is out of control." And then she's like finishes up, and Michael walks like behind the counter, and he's helping his brother. He has a younger brother with dinner, and his brother's name is Asher, and he's like pouring milk or whatever, and Dean has another like violent flashback, and he's like of himself doing the same thing for Sam. And
this scene,
I wanted to die.
Dean, you were so silly.
So like, they're just two little kids, and he's trying to watch Sam, and he's making him SpaghettiOs, and he's pouring Sam a glass of milk, and Sam is like, "Do we have to have SpaghettiOs again? I really don't want to." Yeah. He's like 6 or 7, I want to say. He's like, "Oh, I wanted Lucky Charms," and Dean's like, "There's no Lucky Charms. You're getting SpaghettiOs." He's like, "I'm the mother in this house, and that's what you're cooking." He's like 10, and he lies and says that there aren't any, and Sam is like, "I know there are some left."
He's like, "They're literally sitting on a counter. Like, I can see the box."
Yeah. And Dean is like, "Okay, there's some left, but there's only one bowl, and I didn't get to have any." And then Sam's like, "But please." And Dean gives it to him, and he was like the last little bit that he was saving for himself. And but then like literally Sam, and then of course it's a cereal box, so like there's a toy in the box, and Sam gives the toy to Dean.
He's like, "Do you want the prize?"
And it's like, okay, I'm getting a little emotional. I hate that I'm emotional right now. No.
That is unfortunately the vibe rewatching Supernatural. I hate that I'm emotional right now.
Yeah, and every time I just think of the rusty I'm like, oh no. It's literally just Dean always putting his brother before himself. So
he should have put his brother before himself when the nail was in the way, right? Human shield, am I right?
Okay. I'm so sorry to those of you who don't know what the rusty nail is, because we're gonna keep fucking mentioning it.
When we get to the last episode of the Mystery Spotcast, as you know it, you will be like, "Oh!" And then you'll have to go back and re-listen to our entire catalog.
Fucking rusty nail course. So the flashback ends, and then Dean like takes his key, and they they go to the motel room, and Sam is now researching what these shtriga monsters are, and he's like, okay. Before, when Dean mentioned the shtriga monster, Sam is like, I've never heard of this thing. It's not in Dad's journal. What the fuck are you talking about? And now he's been doing some research on the World Wide Web. And he's like, okay, you were right. It is a thing that exists. And they feed on Spiritus Vitae or Life's Breath. Like, they're literally, Dementor ring wraith-esque.
They're a lot like cats. They suck the breath out of you or out of your children.
Exactly. And this is a real life legend. And he's like, oh, also, there's no way to kill one. And they're invincible to everything. And I was like, that's kind of slay.
That's just like me. That's what's so funny is I'm actually invincible to literally everything. You can't take me out.
And then Dean says, he's like, yeah, actually there is a way to kill them. So Dad told me they're vulnerable when they're feeding, and they can be killed with like consecrated iron bullets, but like only when they're feeding. And Sam's like, how the fuck do you know that? And he doesn't answer. And they're like, okay, well, how are we going to find this thing? So Dean tells Sam that when they're not feeding, they can take on a human form. And a lot of times they take on the form of like an old woman, something kind of unassuming. That's where legends of like, oh, an old crone who's a witch comes from. And Sam's like, who the fuck is that going to be then? Okay, so we looked at where all the victims' houses were, and they were all near the hospital. And then Dean remembers that creepy old woman who was in the hospital with the inverted cross, and he's like, that's got to be her. She's super creepy. And they're like, okay, we got to go. And so they go back to the hospital now.
This next scene.
Oh my God, this is so funny.
It's funny, but I'm also like,
I'm like, sirs, you
guys are
Winchester
so fucking stupid.
Yeah, they're also very dumb.
Like, this is one of those scenes that I'm like, I feel like it's played for laughs, but I'm like, I don't find this very funny.
Yeah. So they run into the hospital in their regular ass clothes, and
literally, Dean is wearing like a fucked up leather jacket, like the same one he always wears. But I'm like, if I was the receptionist, I'd be like, hey, weren't you the guys from the CDC? Why are you here? And why are you strapped?
So they break into this woman's room, and they move closer to her, and they're ready to go. They're ready to go. And she's like, she's not moving. She's not moving. She hasn't turned around, anything. And he gets like really close to her, whatever. And she's lying completely still, and with her eyes are open. And then he gets jump scared by her because she moves, and she's like, hey, why are you stealing my stuff? And
the dude, like, Dean literally has like a gun to her, like, up against her. She's like, hey, what are you doing? And then he's like, oh, we're so sorry, ma'am.
We're like, we're from the maintenance crew, sorry. And she's like, are you stealing my stuff? And like, so this is the part where we realize she's blind. And she has only realized that they're there like once he has gotten right up next to her, and she can hear him. And she's like, hey. And he's like, wasn't she asleep? And she's like, I sleep with my eyes open because people are stealing stuff. And you're like, damn, Sam and Dean were about to commit fucking elder abuse.
No, literally. I'm like, girl, she is slay. I'm sorry that she got played off for laughs. I'm like, you are an icon. I'm sorry that you were experiencing this sort of malignment at the gig.
So, and then she's like, okay, well, if you guys are maintenance, can you fix that cross on the wall? Because can you turn it the right way? I've been asking.
How does she? Okay. How does she know that the cross is turned the wrong way if she's blind?
I mean, she could be not fully blind.
Okay, I'm fine with that explanation.
She could just be, somewhat blind.
I think that was where my confusion came from. I love that she's like, I have selective blindness. She's like, I have cataracts, and they're perfectly shaped. The cataracts are perfectly shaped in a cross, so I know exactly where
she's like, one eye open when I'm sleeping. That's literally her. So,
and she was slay for that. I want her to come back.
Yeah, I do too. So meanwhile, back at the motel, the kids who are the kids of the motel's owner, Michael and Asher, they're sleeping, and we see that same hand coming through the creepy ass fucking window, And then the next morning, Sam and Dean, they're heading back to their hotel, and Sam is ripping on Dean. He's like, "You idiot! You were about to shoot this old lady. The fuck is wrong with you, you dumbass?"
It was hilarious. Sam does that little laugh that we don't hear him do very often.
Yeah.
Like he's literally giggling. It's hilarious.
It's literally just Jared having a good time.
Yeah, he's like, finally, I get to win.
Yeah. So, but then they, they're laughing and they're whatever, and then they come in and they come outside, and the older kid, Michael, is sitting outside and he's looking unhappy, and they're like
despondently so. Like, he is not looking good.
Like, what happened to this fucking kid? And so Dean, in a surprising moment where he's very empathetic, he goes up to this kid and he's like, "Hey, what's wrong?" And Michael's like, "My younger brother, he got sick like the other kids." And the mom appears and she's like in a hurry, she's got to go to the hospital. And Dean's like, "Hey, like, he's like, he tells the kid, he's like, it's gonna be okay, like, just like, what happened, whatever." And then he goes to the mom and he's like,
okay, before he goes to the mom, the kid is like, "It's my fault because I left the window open the night before. Like, I thought I closed the window. Like, he's my responsibility. I'm supposed to protect my little brother, and it's my fault that he's sick." And Dean's like, "Hey, I've got a little brother too. And it's like, I always felt like it was my responsibility, but this is not your fault, okay?" And it just, like, it breaks my heart because Dean is so good with kids. Like, every time we've seen him interact with a child, he has been able to connect with them. And it just, like, the way that I'm so sad that he never got to, like, have an actual family.
I mean,
for
he
real.
did.
Yeah, but I mean, like, for real. Because I'm like,
yeah. Yeah.
Listen, I'm just saying, when I am writing Supernatural, the new Supernatural reboot, I am decanonizing the last episode, and Cass gets out of super hell, and he and Dean move to the countryside and raise an army of children together.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. I'm also...
that's my canon.
Now it's making me think about Dean and Jack, and now I'm very...
Anyway.
I made myself upset.
Yeah.
Oh, damn. I hate that this show is good. Literally. He has this, like... I'm like, damn, Dean is experiencing therapy at this moment. And Dean is like, "It is not your fault." And then the mom is like freaking out. And he's like, "You are not like in a state to drive. Like, can I drive you to the hospital?" And she's like, "No, you don't have to do that." And he's like, "Yeah, I can. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, just give me the keys and you can sit in the passenger seat."
Yeah, he's like, "I insist. Like, ma'am, you are gonna get into a car accident."
And I was like, "Oh, they were raised right." And I was like, "No, that was Dean raising them right."
No, literally, Dean Winchester.
I was like, "Oh." Before he leaves, Dean turns to Sam and he enters this fucking Joker moment and he's like, "We gotta kill that motherfucking thing." And Sam's like, "Oh, okay, Jesus." And so while Dean is at the hospital, Sam goes to the library to research the witch. And I believe he's using a microfiche because he's looking at old documents. So he's at the library. Sam calls Dean at the hospital. He's like, "Okay, there's been these reports from like the 1890s onward of all these similar cases of children that become ill and they die after a few months and nobody fucking knows why. And a new town gets hit every like 15 to 20 years. In one of the articles, there's a picture of some doctors standing around a kid's body. It's like from 1893. And who does he see in the fucking picture? It's the doctor, Dr. Heidegger, and you can clearly see his face. He's entered his Carlisle.
No, literally, he is like evil Carlisle Cullen.
Yeah, Carlisle Cullen actually knew this guy and was like, I gotta be the opposite of that.
Is anyone else getting kind of a bad vibe from that guy?
Yeah. And Sam's like, "Hey, I think this guy is the shtriga. Like, he's been the thing all along." And now the old woman has clearly been a red herring. So they're like, "Fuck, that's a really good disguise because people trust doctors and they're innocuous and he's in the pediatric ward." Oh, fuck. So Dean is at the hospital and he's looking at the doctor in the same room, and the doctor's like goes to talk to Dean, and Dean's like, he's like having a moment. He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna fucking kill this guy." And the doctor's like, "Yeah, I'm just really concerned about these kids." And Dean's like, I'm fucking sure you are.
Dean's like, I will kill you with my mind if I had the power.
He's literally...
He literally, in this next scene, he's like, were it not for the laws of this land, I would have slaughtered you.
So they go back to the motel. Dean is fucking pissed. And Sam is like, damn, surprised you didn't fucking shoot him on the spot. And Dean's like, okay, like, I wanted to, but it would have been useless. You can't kill it unless it's feeding. And I wasn't strapped. I didn't have the consecrated iron bullets with me or anything. And I was also in the middle of a fucking pediatric ward. And Sam is like, oh, wow, Dean using critical thinking. That's a surprise.
I also like Sam being like, wow, Dean using critical thinking. Like, Sam, shut up. He's the coastal elite.
Not coastal elite, Sam.
No, Sam is like, when he fills out a survey, he's like, and I have a college education. Fuck you, Sam.
Damn. So he's like, okay, we have to kill it, and we have to use Michael, the kid who's here, whose brother just got sick. We have to use him as bait to draw it out, because you can only kill it when it's feeding on somebody. And Sam's like, we cannot use a child as fucking bait. And Dean's like, there's no other way, or else it's gonna keep killing kids for like decades. And Dean's like, we can't do this because I screwed up before. And Sam's like, what the fuck are you talking about? How did you screw it up? What are you talking about? So Dean tells him about what happened the first time their dad tried to hunt this thing, and he has another flashback. And basically, now it's been 3 days since John left in the past flashback, and Sam and Dean, they're still in the motel. They're really restless. And Dean is like super bored, so he decides to go out, and he's like 10, and he's like, okay, like nothing's gonna happen if I just like go out and I go play in the arcade across the street. And before he leaves, he like checks on Sam, who's sleeping, and he once the arcade closes, he comes back, and when he enters, like everything's dark except for the light on in Sam's room, and he's like, ah, shit, something's wrong. And he like slowly walks towards it, and he opens it, and he looks in, and there is Sam sleeping with this Palpatine ass looking shtriga above it, ready to feed on him. And 10-year-old Dean is now reaching for a fucking shotgun, and as he points for the gun, John, his dad, bursts in, and he fires at the shtriga before it starts feeding on Sam. And the thing is now hurt, and it runs away. And John like rushes in. He goes and like he holds Sam, and he's like, "Are you okay?" Whatever. And he turns to Dean, and he's like, "Where the fuck were you?" And Dean was like, like everything was fine. Like I just went out for a second, whatever." And he's like, "You were supposed to watch Sam. What the fuck? You were not supposed to keep your eyes away from him or whatever." And he basically is like, "This is your fault. You were supposed to watch him."
Yeah, like he doesn't say it, but he has this fucking look in his eyes. Like he looks at Dean. And it is like, I'm like, oh, God, it is,
Dean has basically felt like all these kids dying and this thing getting away has been his fault the entire time. And obviously, Sam almost dying is his fault this whole time. He's got some issues.
It's also so troubling because it flashes back, and Dean is like, yeah, and Dad never looked at me the same after that.
Yeah.
And Sam is like, oh, that is so fucked up.
And Sam's like, I don't remember any of this, like, at all. And
he's like, well, yeah, you were like 6.
Yeah. And Dean's like, yeah, he clearly sent us here to finish the job. Which is why at this point I'm like, and why would he send them to do this now? Obviously because the thing started showing back up. But
yeah.
So
also because I feel like John Winchester is the kind of parent who's like, well, you messed up, now's your chance to fix it, despite the fact that it's like, no, this is really,
child.
Like, not something that your child should be dealing with. Like, this is not a Dean problem. This was you being like, okay, bye guys.
Yeah.
Problem. Like, this was a parenting style problem, John.
Yeah, that's John with everything. So, the next thing that the brothers do, I don't think is the smartest. So, they go and they talk to the kid, Michael. And they tell him that monsters are real, what this monster is, and what their plan is. And they're like, you help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hoe. To this 10-year-old. And first of all, telling a 10-year-old that monsters exist is really bad.
Like,
And second of
ethically.
all, being like, hey, can we use you as bait? We are random strangers. All of
And,
it,
like,
I'm like, guys.
Also, for a second, I will say, though, in this scene, it is kind of framed where you think, like, it's actually kind of funny the way they do this scene.
Yeah.
The first part's very heartwarming because it is Dean basically pleading with this kid and being like, listen, like, we don't know what's gonna happen, but, like, we need to stop this thing. And he's like, I have a younger brother. I know exactly the feeling that you're having. We really need you to help us with this. And he's like, really? And then it cuts. And they're back in their motel room. And Dean is like, well, how was I supposed to know he would say no? So it cuts. It's like, you kind of think the kid is going to say yes. And then it cuts to Dean being like, damn it.
Like, yeah, you idiot. He's 10.
Yeah.
But then Michael knocks on the door. And he's like, so if you kill this thing, will it make my brother better? And Dean is honest with him. And he's like, I don't know, but we hope so. And he's like, okay, all right, I'll do it. And he also says, he asks Dean, would he do anything for his little brother? And then, of course, Dean looks at Sam and he's like, of course I would. And the kid, Michael, is like, yeah, I would too. And you're like, stop. I need you to stop. This is beating my ass. Like, I can't. I need you to stop.
No, this episode was so challenging.
So here's the part where I started screaming, crying, and throwing up, remembering why his name is Michael. Because now, of course, Michael is a parallel to Dean. For those of you who may have seen some things about Supernatural, the angel Michael and Dean have a very special relationship.
Yeah, an interesting connection. That's a little Easter egg for later.
Yeah, the angels Lucifer and Michael have a very interesting connection with Dean and Sam. So when they did this, I was like,
I'm like, this cannot be intentional, but it feels like it. This is one, I fear once again another situation in which Supernatural is like, we're going to do the most amazing thematic thing, but also it's completely unplanned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first, 4 seasons were planned, so maybe.
I think it was the first 5.
So, maybe.
But even so, I'm like,
Yeah, so.
Mayhaps Eric Kripke snapped.
I was like, Michael! Yeah, I was screaming, crying, and throwing up. So that night, Sam and Dean are like, okay, we're going to place night vision cameras in Michael's bedroom. And Michael, you're going to go to sleep, and we are going to, sit outside the room, and we're going to wait for this motherfucking thing to show up. And they're like, okay, here's the plan. When the thing shows up, we're going to come in the room, and we're going to have guns. And Dean has a very honest conversation with the kid, and he's like, have you ever heard a gunshot before in real life? And the kid's like in movies, and he's like, no, it is far louder and far scarier. And the kid's like, so how do I know you're not going to shoot me? And he's like, number 1, I'm a very good shot. And number 2, the plan is when the thing comes in and you see us come in and go to shoot it, you need to jump out of the bed and get under the bed. He's like, I was like, okay. He's like, he's being realistic with this child to be like, here's the plan. And the kid is like, okay, just don't shoot me. And Dean's like, I'm not going to shoot you. I will wait until you are out of the way. Of course I will. He also, because he's using real rounds instead of the usual rock salt, which would still hurt.
Yeah. I think he's using the
consecrated iron
consecrated
rounds.
Yeah. But it's still rounds.
Yeah. So they're waiting. It gets to 3 a.m. Sam and Dean are watching the thing. And
Kill the Shtriga 3 a.m. challenge.
5 Nights at Freddy's ass. So Sam looks at Dean and he's like, hey, I'm really sorry for giving you shit for always following Dad's orders. And Dean's like, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal, whatever. And they have this heartwarming little moment, and then they see the creature coming in, approaching Michael, the child. And it's about to feed. And Sam's like, we got to go in. And he's like, wait, we can't scare it away. We got to wait. And so it is now on top. This Palpatine looking thing is on top of the kid Michael are about to be, and then they're like, okay, now, and then they burst in and they start shooting it, and the kid like does what he's supposed to, and he jumps under the bed or whatever, and they shoot this thing and it goes down. And they kind of let their guard down. They get close. They still have their guns out there, whatever, and they're like, okay, kid, like stay under the bed until we make sure everything's okay. And they get kind of close, and the thing looks like it's dead, and then, and then it fucking jump scares, and it grabs it throws Dean across the room, and then it grabs Sam and it chokes him, like, and it starts to try and feed on Sam. And Dean is, like, having one of those moments, and he gets there in time, and he finally does, like, kill the thing, like, while it's feeding on Sam.
Yeah. He's like, no, I think the fuck not.
Yeah, he enters his Joker era, and,
He's like, we live in a society, but you don't. And then
we live in a society. And he's like, hey, like, Sam, are you okay? And Sam's like, yeah. And Dean is still having a little bit of a moment, having seen Sam get fucked up, and so he just keeps shooting this thing.
Yeah, it is dead, and he is like, I'm going to shoot you 8 more times. And I'm like, you know what? Slay. Fight your demons.
Yeah, literally. Slay, fight your demons. That's the title of this show.
That's the title. That's what Supernatural would be called if it was good.
Slay, fight your demons.
That's the musical adaptation.
No, that's from the 200th episode that those 2 girls write.
No!
Slay, fight your demons.
You're done.
So this thing, it basically kind of like Obi-Wan in the robe in A New Hope, like, disappears and, like, goes into the ether, basically.
Yeah, it just kind of flies away. It becomes steam.
Yeah.
It's kind of giving the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah. And then the kid, Michael, comes out from the bed and he's like, okay, is everything okay? After Dean Winchester has been attacked by Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sam Winchester has been attacked by Emperor. Oh, they both do. Dean got thrown across the room.
To be fair, he's a lot like Darth Vader.
I thought he was a lot like Joker from the movie Joker.
He can't be like both. You're gonna tell me Darth Vader is not the most Joker-like Star Wars character?
Vader being like, we live in a society, Padme.
No, we live in a... Padme, we live in a society. That was him when he woke up at the end of Revenge of the Sith, where he's like, where's Padme? Is she okay? And then Palpatine's like, you killed her. And he's like, we live in a society.
No, when he's going to kill the younglings and he's like, we live in a society. Like, we can't do this, okay? Anyways, so it's the next morning. Sam and Dean, they're packing up. And the kid's mom is like, hey, everything's okay. Asher, the younger son, he's recovering in the hospital. Like, they're gonna just keep him overnight. And then all the other kids are like miraculously okay. And she's like, yeah, and the doctor told me whatever. And then Dean's like, oh, that doctor. So what happened to Dr. Heidegger? And she's like, oh, he must be out sick today. And Dean's like, yeah, must be. It's very funny of him.
Yeah. He said, oh my God, get well soon.
I was like,
or not.
Oh, she passed away.
That would be so sad. Anyway.
So, and then Michael has another little Dean moment where he's like, so can I see him? Can I see him? She's like, of course you can. He's like, get in the car, whatever. And she's like, hey, and then she's like, okay, I gotta go, before he like hot wires the car and drives himself. And you're like, oh, Dean moment.
Yeah.
I was like, oh. And then Sam and Dean have this very interesting conversation that does have a lot of implications. I think they have further conversations like this, where Sam kind of turns to Dean and he's like, it's really sad that Michael's always going to know what's out there, that we had to tell him. And he's like, I wish that I could live in that innocence, and that it sucks that we had to break that for him. And Dean doesn't say, oh, I wish that I could have that too. Dean says, As I wish that you could have kept your innocence and not known as well. And then they drive off and you're like, okay, I'm upset.
Yeah.
I'm not well.
No, the end of this episode is so bittersweet. I'm like, dang.
Oh.
That episode, like, thematically was just quite good, in my opinion. I really like episodes that talk about, like, oh, this is related to something that's going on emotionally with Sam and Dean, without it being, like, hitting you over the head with, like, oh my god, the thing that's happening with these kids is just like them, which is happening here. But I think that I don't know why this episode hits different than other episodes where it's been like, oh,
I think it's the flashbacks.
Yeah, I think that the flashbacks are really helpful. I think they also... Jeffrey Dean Morgan is a really, really good actor.
He is.
Like,
he is.
When he looks back at Dean and is like, why'd you do that? Like, I felt that. Like, he is perfect for this role.
Yeah, like, and I hate John Winchester so much because of him, and he's not even on screen that much.
Yeah, but it's like that. It's like the kid actors in this episode, not just for young Sam and Dean, but like the Michael is a really good actor as well.
Yeah, all the kid actors are really good as well. Like this episode is a bit of a sleigh. Ollie, do you want to take us into the next episode?
Oh my gosh, I would love to. I will let you guys know. This one's a little bit less heavy than the one before.
But it's still wild.
It's still wild. This one is very much Monster of the Week. So this is season 1, episode 19. It is called Provenance. The cold open begins. We see this young couple, and they are looking at this painting. This painting is very important. It is of this man who's standing there, his wife who's sitting. There are 2 sons in the front and a daughter to the side, and the dad is looking at the daughter. So just keep that in mind. The young couple is looking at this painting, and the wife is like, I cannot believe that we bought this. Like, they are clearly dressed as though they were just at an event. And he's like, oh, I don't know. I think it's kind of fun. Like, I think it's crazy that we did this. And then she's like, okay, well, I'm going to go upstairs and I'll see you up there. So clearly they're about to go have some fun adult time together. And he's like, okay. He's like, the husband is like, okay, slay. Let me go, like, lock the door and whatever.
Yeah, and I'm like, why is it going to take you 10 minutes to lock up in this house?
To be
10
fair,
minutes.
To be fair, it doesn't. He kind of goes over there and is, like, looking at the lock and doing whatever. We see this kind of shadowy figure going, hanging, doing things in the house. And we see this figure kind of put his hand on the doorknob and open the door. Like, the bedroom door. And then we see the husband walking up the stairs, so clearly it was not him. Then the husband walks in and he's like, hey, Anne, hey, babe, ready to do it? And he's like, whoa, hey, baby, what's going on? And he turns on the light, and she is covered in blood. Like, she is fucked up. And then he's like, oh my god, oh, ah! And then it cuts as he is clearly getting attacked. And then it's like, supernatural. Time to watch the actual show now. Cold open over.
This was another cold open where I was like, oh, now I remember this viscerally.
Yeah, I definitely remember this episode. It is slay. So, the boys, Sam and Dean, are looking at this newspaper, right, as they are driving. And Sam is like, oh, this looks like kind of like our deal. It says this couple, Mark and Ann Teleska, were found dead in a locked house. There were no fingerprints and no murder weapon, but clearly they were brutally murdered. Also, looked in Dad's journal, and there are a series of murders over a couple decades in this exact same area. So it's in Dad's journal, so clearly he thought there was something going on here. They go to the home of the couple, and there are, like, no signs of supernatural activity. Like, they go in, but it's like, it's basically empty. And I'm like, that's weird. But there's no signs of supernatural activity. But also, all of their furniture and all of their belongings are gone. So they're like, that's weird. So they find out that all the furnishings have been taken to an auction house. And they're like, okay, well, if this is a spirit, it could have been attached to an object that was in the house. So we need to go to the auction house and figure out what it could possibly be attached to. I'm obsessed with that they have been like, oh, literally like one night. And they're like, I think it was more than one night. Like one day after this had happened, I think it probably took them time to drive there and whatever. But it's really funny because based on what we, the viewer, see, it does feel like basically overnight, this couple, within a span of 12 hours, this couple died, and then they already have gotten all of their things to the auction house. Which, again, I don't think is what actually happened, but it's funny to think about. The boys roll up to the auction house, and this is also funny because everyone is dressed like this is like a semi-formal event. Like, not necessarily black tie, but people are wearing, like, sport coats and, like, dresses and that kind of stuff, right? Sam and Dean roll in. Sam is wearing a zip-up hoodie. And Dean is wearing his leather jacket, both wearing, like, their jeans and their boots.
Like, they researched something to wear in most occasions, and in this occasion, they were like, fuck it.
No, they were literally like, yeah, fuck it, we don't care. So they're hanging out, and Dean is just like, as he is known to do whenever they go to a little mixer like this, he is just finding random food to eat.
He is so relatable. He is gay and neurodivergent, huh?
He shows up, he's like, do y'all have little cheese cubes? That is always his MO. But
when he picks up the little champagne flute, I was like, all right, now he's in his little fruity era.
Yeah, he's partying.
He's like, let me have one of those. And you're like, Dean.
Yeah.
Like, if they were really trying to push him being, like, really, really quite over the top masculine, it would have been him being like, oh, why don't they have any beer? But he's like, oh, with some champagne? He's like, can I have some champagne? Thank you.
There's like, also... beer is relevant in this episode.
Yeah,
a little later, there is a line about it. Not to Dean, though. But anyway, Dean is like, I'm sampling all of the food and everything. And they're walking around looking at this house. And then this gentleman, who's wearing a suit, comes up and he says, I don't think you guys are on the guest list. This is a private event. And Sam is like, oh, well, we're art collectors. So we came because we heard about this and, whatever. So we are invited. And Dean's like, yeah, check your little guest list and you'll find us on there. Just like in the most dickish way. And Sam is like, Dean, please stop.
I don't understand why Dean is being like this.
No, he's having some sort of issue that day. But Dean is like being just a big idiot. And Sam is like, okay, whatever. So that gentleman who had introduced himself as Daniel Blake, the owner of the auction house, was like, okay, fine, whatever. So he leaves. This young woman, very pretty brunette young woman, walks up. And Sam is like, oh, hey, girly. What's up? And she's like, oh, I'm Sarah. I'm Sarah Blake. My dad is that guy who you were just talking to. But yeah, this is from the Teleska estate. Everything being auctioned away. So yeah, like it's a fun little business that we do. Yeah. Having this conversation with Sam, and Dean is kind of standing there like, ooh, something is happening here. But then her dad walks up and is like, hey, I just looked, you guys definitely aren't on the guest list, so can you leave? So they leave.
And Sam is like, and at that moment Sam's like, so sorry, like I don't want to cause a problem, whatever. Like, clearly Sam is like, I want to die here.
Yeah, and Dean's like, whatever, goodbye. So they get back to their hotel room, motel, whatever, and Dean is like, yo, Sam, you should go out with that girl, with Sarah, because she was definitely interested in you. And Sam is like, I don't want to go out with a girl. And Dean's like, okay, well, first of all, it's just to get information. So don't...
That's not slay of you, Dean.
Yeah, it's not very slay. I get it, but it's not slay. But he's like, come on, dude, like, just to get information. And he's like, Dean, why are you like, I don't want to do this. And he's like, come on, how else are we going to get in there? And Sam was like, okay, fine.
This is Dean having a moment of, I have to everyone else around me has to experience compulsory heterosexuality at the same level as I do, or else it'll make me start questioning some things. So everybody else has to follow my lead. Everybody.
Literally. So Sam and Sarah go on this date to this nice little restaurant, and the waiter comes up and he's like, "Here's the wine list, sir." And Sam is looking at the wine list, and Sarah goes, "I don't know about my date here, but I'm gonna have a beer." And Sam is like, oh my god, same. Okay, thank you. You're so normal. And she's like, "Yeah, I know, like, I don't really get out all that much." And he's like, "Oh my god, why?" And she's like, "Well, my mom died really unexpectedly a year ago, and, like, you know, since then I've just been a little bit closed off." And Sam was like, "Yeah, I get that. I haven't been out for a while either." And she's like, "Well, why? What's up?" And he's like, I can't." And she's like, that's fine. I understand. No worries." And they just have this, like, nice little conversation. And she is slay. She is very cool. I like her a lot.
So slay. Like, she's now, her outfits are slaying. Her personality is serving. I'm like, Sam, you don't deserve her at all.
No, I know. It cuts to the next scene, and Sam is back in the motel with Dean, and he's like, has all these papers, and Dean is like, "Ooh, so how'd it go?" And he was like, "It was fine. I went over to Sarah's house, and she actually gave me copies of the provenances of the items in the Teleska house. So I have all of the, like, the manifest of what they were going to sell." So yeah, and so Dean's like, "So you went back to her house and you just got papers?" And Sam was like, "Yeah, and we're not going to continue to talk about it right now." So Dean's like, okay, fine. Sam is like, "Oh, well, but I do think I found something." And they're looking at it, and they find that the portrait of this family that the couple was looking at earlier in the cold open was painted in 1910. It's of a family who, the patriarch of that family's name is Isaiah Merchant. But they find that it was owned by other families in the past because they're looking at the history, because apparently the auction house that Sarah works for had just sold that painting to the Teleskas, like, the night they died. So they're like, okay, Sam and Dean are clearly like, okay, this painting has something to do with it. So Sam is looking at who owned it before, or Dean is looking at who owned it before. And Sam is like, okay, those names all match the list of names that Dad has in his journal of people who have died here. So clearly the painting is the issue. Which I think is, I love a fucked up painting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very fun
This was
trope.
very similar to The Mirror, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. If y'all remember, there was a Bloody Mary episode where they had to destroy a mirror. And this very much feels like that, which I love. But the boys enter their Mission Impossible moment. They have a little Mission Impossible moment where we see them break into this auction house. The alarm is going off, and they are fucking sprinting, looking for this painting. They run up the stairs, they see the painting, and they rip the painting out of the frame. They leave the frame for some reason. I don't know why they didn't just take the frame, but it's not important.
Yeah, I guess they thought it would be easier to sneak out if you just could roll up the painting.
That is true. But they rip the painting out of the frame and are like, "We gotta go." So they get out of there, and we see them burning this painting. And they're like, "All right, it's cool. We did it." And they are like, "We're done." So they go back to their hotel. And this cuts to the next day, and Dean's like, "Oh my god, Sam, I think I lost my wallet. I dropped my wallet there. It has my fingerprints and my fake IDs in it. Like, they're gonna know we were there and we broke in and destroyed that painting. We gotta go back." And Sam's like, "Dude, oh my god, okay." So,
he's like, how much of a fucking amateur are you?
Yeah, he's like, "You were a fucking idiot. Oh my god." So they get there. And they walk in, and Dean immediately is cool. And Sam's like, "Are you not going to look for your wallet?" Sarah starts walking up to them, and Dean pulls out his wallet, like, out of his pocket, because he did not lose it. He just wanted Sam to see Sarah again. So Sarah walks up, and she and Sam are having this conversation, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. We're actually leaving town tonight. It was really nice to meet you and all that, but, like, we're leaving." Oh! what is that? And he sees the painting in the frame, like completely fine.
And the way he delivers this is so funny because
no, it's hilarious.
Yeah, whatever. And he's like, oh my God. And she's like, what? And he's like, oh, the painting is really beautiful. You cannot sell this painting. Like, he immediately becomes fucking crazy.
He's like, you cannot sell this painting. And she's like, yeah, actually, I'm not going to let my dad sell this painting because it's in such poor taste. Like, that is not happening. So yeah, don't worry about it. No, the painting's not going to get sold. And he's like, well, I don't think my brother and I are actually leaving town tonight. But we'll see. But anyway, thank you so much. Slay, I gotta go. So Sam and Dean leave, and Dean's like, whoa, what is your issue? And he's like, dude, I just saw the painting. And he's like, but we burned that. And he's like, actually, maybe it's not tied to the painting, but maybe the painting's like channeling something. So they're like, okay, this is connected to Isaiah Merchant and his family. So they go to the local library, right? Hunting demons isn't hard when you have a library card.
No, literally, the first few seasons of this show are literally, like, before they just start using the internet, are literally such an endorsement for libraries.
Absolutely. But they're at this local library, and they're talking to this history buff. And I don't know if he's
a true crime girlie. He's a little librarian, but he's also a true crime girlie. Because as soon as he's like, oh, so you guys into, like, crime history? So, like, and I'm like, okay, slay.
Yeah, it was very slay. So this guy is like very excitedly telling them about like, oh, here's what happened. Here's the history. I love a local history buff. I love when they have guys like this in their episodes.
Yeah.
I just think his energy is very good. The actor's very fun. He got it. But he was like, yeah, so Isaiah Merchant was accused of killing his wife and 2 sons and adopted daughter, and also himself. So he was, but all of them were cremated. But this took place, I believe he said that the painting was done in 1910, and it was like very shortly after that they all died, that Isaiah supposedly killed them. And I take issue with this. And I'll tell you why. The first cremation in the United States was in 1876, right? But cremation did not get popular as something to do until the mid-century. Like cremation was not like a super popular thing until later on, way after this. So you're going to tell me a family that died in around 1910 had their children cremated? Like, unless that was very expressly written in their, like, in their will, there is no way that anyone would just be like, yeah, let's just cremate them. Like, that is not happening in 1910. That's not happening. So,
I'm calling out Supernatural for historical inaccuracy now.
Exactly. So anyway, that was just something that I was like, that's not correct. But anyway, so they're all cremated. And here's the other thing, too. We later find out that they had a mausoleum. That's a spoiler for later in the episode. And I'm like, you guys had a mausoleum picked out? Like, you have a mausoleum. There's no way that people who have a mausoleum are getting cremated, like, at that time. Anyway, yeah. I have a lot of thoughts about this that are not relevant to the episode at all. Anyway, but they find out that everyone in the family was cremated, apparently. So they're like, well, shit, there's no body to burn. So, cool. All right, that's fine. We'll have to figure something else out. But while they're there, they also find a copy of the painting. Like, there's like, the guy's like, oh, in our records, like, on this family, we have this painting. So they're like, cool. We've got a picture of the painting now. So they go back to their motel and they're kind of like shooting the shit, trying to figure it out. And Sam is looking at the painting. And he's like, hey, that's weird. Dean's like, what's up? He's like, in this painting, in the old picture, Isaiah is looking straight forward. But in the painting that we saw, he is looking down towards the girl. So we need to get to the paint. Like, something's going on. We need to get that painting, right? Like, we need to get the painting and then we can figure it out. And Sam was like, okay, how do we do that? And Dean's like, you need to call Sarah. Sam was like, I don't want to call Sarah. Dean, this is not just about this case. Like, there's something else. Like, why are you pushing me so hard to see her? And Dean is like, listen, I know that you had a really tough thing happen with Jessica. And I'm really, really sorry. I can't imagine what it would be like to lose someone that you love like that.
Well,
horrible news,
you
Dean.
will know, Dean.
You will know.
You will. And you will fall to the floor.
Completely dazed. But that's
honey, you got a big storm coming. Actually, he'll know several times. Shout out to the Purgatory season.
So true.
Oh, and also shout out to the season where Castiel fucking died.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god, when he picks up the jacket in the river. Oh, Dean, you're gonna know at least 3 times.
But anyway, he's like, no, I don't know what that's like, but don't you think Jessica would want you to, like, live your life and not constantly be, like, trapped in this horrible feeling? And Sam was like, dude, you're right. Like, it's too fresh. I can't. But I will call her and see what we can do about the painting. And Dean's like, all right, whatever, fine. So he calls Sarah and he's like, hey, girly. Yeah, we're still in town. Hey, quick question. Dean and I maybe were interested in buying that painting, so if we could come see it again, that would be great. And she's like, oh, actually, a friend of mine in the art world, the older lady, her name is Evelyn. She actually just bought the painting, so she has it. And Sam is like, okay, well, I need Evelyn's address right now because she is in danger. And then...
And the way that they just cut to Evelyn's house, but, like, and the way that I'm like, and she just gave him the address, like, again, Winchester privilege strikes again. Like,
yeah. We cut to them rushing up to the house, and Sarah shows up and she's like, dude, what is going on? Like, I just gave you this address. What I think maybe happened with her is, like, she was like, oh yeah, here's the address, and then immediately was like, that's not a good idea. I need to go there too. So she is also there and she's like, dude, what is happening right now? And Sam and Dean are like, no, she's in danger. Like, we need to get in there. And Sarah's like, okay, Evelyn's my friend, so we can't just, like, break into her house. And they're like, okay, cool. So anyway, they break into her house and they see her sitting, like, in an armchair. And Sarah's like, hey, Evelyn. Hello? And walks up next to her and goes to, like, reach her arm out to put it on her shoulder. And Sam is like, no, don't do that. And Evelyn's head, like, leans back and she's been, like, halfway decapitated. Her throat is still lashed. So Sarah's like, she's screaming, crying, throwing up. They call the police, and then the boys and Sarah return to their motel room, and she is like, okay, what just happened? Because I did just tell the police that I went in there by myself to check in. So, like, I've already lied to law enforcement, so you guys are going to tell me what's going on right now. And they're like, okay, so get this. The picture is haunted, and it is killing people.
And I think it's either she says it or Sam says it, and he's like, yeah. She's like, wow, the kind of guys that I'm getting dates with. Whew.
Yeah. But she is like, okay, well, you guys are literally off the shits, but I've already lied to the police, so I guess I'm in for a penny out for a pound. Like,
and
let's
they're
do
like,
it.
you saw the painting move. You saw it. And she's like, no, I thought I was going crazy. And they're like, bud, you saw it, though.
Yeah, because in that moment, the dad, Isaiah, his head did move to, like, look around. And she was like, that is not normal. So they're like, oh, the painting is cursed. Cool. So, or is haunted. So they're like, okay, Isaiah is, like, killing people. Like, he is exiting the painting to kill people. Like, that is not good. So they're like, this spirit has to be stopped. So they break into Evelyn's house again. And Sarah's like, you guys are really, like, too comfortable breaking into a house. And they're like, yeah, it's kind of our job, unfortunately. So they go in, And they're noticing that more things in this painting have changed.
This episode becomes one of those games of like, what's the difference between the two pictures?
No, I feel like I'm looking at like a highlights magazine. Also because I was watching this episode on 1.5 speed. It was going so fast. I had no idea what was going on. They look and they're like, there's a mausoleum in this painting. And it says merchant on it. So it must be like their family name.
Well, there's a painting within the painting.
Yeah.
And the two and they're different. And so
they have the picture that they got from the library and they're looking at it next to the picture that's actually the painting that's actually there. So there's this little picture like behind the family in the painting, and the painting is changed, and the current painting has a picture of the mausoleum on it. So they're like, okay, slay, we need to go there. So the squad goes there, and Sarah is like, okay, so now we're breaking into a mausoleum just to make sure. Like, this is what you guys do. And they're like, yeah. So she's like, wow, that is quite troubling. But okay, whatever. I'm into it. It's fine. So they go in.
Girl, you're really down bad, but also I was a Sam girl. I get it. But also I would have been like, I'm standing outside. I'm not going into the fucking creepy mausoleum. No, thank you.
So true. But they go in and they're looking around, and she goes, that is the creepiest thing I've ever seen. And we see that there is like all of the cremated remains in these urns, and the doll, there's one urn that has a doll encased over it, like a porcelain doll that has like hair and a dress and all that. And Dina's like, yeah, it used to be like sometimes when kids would die, they would bury them or like preserve their favorite toy with them. So that's probably just why that's here. So they're like, okay, well, interesting. Dina's like, do you notice that there's something not right about this? And Sam's like, yeah, there's only 4 urns. There were 5 people in the family, so one of them clearly didn't get cremated. We go to them going to, I want to say they went back to the library. No, they went to go and get they did go back to the library, but they were looking through public records to try to figure out what happened to Isaiah's body. Dad.
Dean goes in.
Yeah, Dean goes in, and Sam and Sarah are sitting outside, and they have this conversation where Sarah is like, so this is like your job? And he's like, yeah.
And we don't get paid.
And we it's not a job because we don't get paid. And she's like, slay. So do you want to like she's not like coming on to him, but she is basically like what's up? Like, is this thing between us like gonna be a thing? And Sam is like, I'm really sorry. Like, I like you a lot, but like, I kind of have beef with Sam for saying this, but he's like, I like you a lot, but like, and this is all real. Like, I saw my mother and my girlfriend get killed by a monster because of what we do. And I can't go through that kind of pain again. I can't lose someone else. People who get close to me, it's like I'm cursed. And what's funny to me about this scene is when Sam is like, I can't go through that kind of pain again. And I'm like, yeah, Jessica also did die. Like, you're not like, oh, I'm sad Jessica died. I know he is, but it's like, I'm like, you're making it a bit about yourself, Sam.
It's also funny because an ongoing joke in the supernatural fandom is that any woman who is with Sam is inevitably cursed. And him saying this preemptively before he is with more women is, I'm like, ooh, Apollo with the gift of prophecy.
And I also have a horrible news. This is a spoiler, but I'm not going to say what happens. Sarah does show up again later.
Yeah.
And the curse is real with her. Yeah. Anyway, but we'll get there. But she is like, well, Sam, like, you can't make that choice for me to say like, oh, I shouldn't like you because something would happen. Like, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. You never know. She
was so right for that.
And she was right. And she was like, yeah, Sam, like, you can't choose what I'm going to do with my life. I appreciate you telling me, but like, if I like you, I like you. And people die all the time. Like, my mother died and people die.
Yeah. Well, and then Sam's like, well, it's not just like, oh, you're going to be sad because we break up or like someone dies accidentally. He's like, it is a life and death situation of like, you will be in mortal danger from ghosts, like, or demons. Like, I just hope you know that. Yeah. And she's like, I don't really care.
She's like, so cool. Anyway, so Dean walks up and he's like, ooh, hope I'm not interrupting anything.
He, like, pokes his head between them. It's very funny.
And both of them are like, no, not at all. And he's like, yeah, obviously. Okay, cool. So turns out Isaiah actually got buried in a pauper's grave. And I know where it is. So they go to this pauper's grave and dig up the bones, and they burn the bones. And she's like, wow, once again, you guys are very comfortable burning bones.
And digging graves. And they're like, yeah, it's not our first time. And she's like, lots to unpack there.
So then the bestie squad, Sam, Sarah, and Dean, go back to Evelyn's house where the painting still is. And they're like, okay, just to be safe, we're going to burn the painting as well. And make sure, like, it actually burns this time and stays burned.
So when they get to the house is very funny because they get out of the car and Dean doesn't get out with them. And Dean's like, go make a move, whatever. And Sam was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, we're investigating a fucking ghost murder. Why would I go make a move? And he's like, go on and do it. And Sam's like, I'll kill you. And then, like, he's going up the steps, whatever. And then Dean plays some, like, mid-2000s like, pop music.
It was so bad.
Like, you guys are hiding and breaking into somebody's house. And Dean's like, and Sam's like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. And then they go inside.
Yeah, they go inside and Dina's like, so they are in this house and they're looking around and Sarah walks up and she looks at the painting and she's like, hey Sam, fun fact, Isaiah is still looking down. The little girl is not in the painting, so where's the little girl? And they're like, oh no. And they turn around and guess who has just walked up? It is the little girl.
Yeah.
And she is...
The doors all slam, and there's, like, wind blowing, and this little girl is showing up with her little creepy little doll that looks just like her that she's dragging on the ground.
Yeah, and she's, like, she's also got, like, a straight razor.
It's Orphan meets Sweeney Todd.
Yeah, she is, like, oh my god, so slay, I'm gonna slit your neck now. And she's doing that thing that they do in Supernatural where they, like, speed up the person walking so it looks like this specter is going in, like, fast motion and then really slow.
Oh my god, Sonic the Hedgehog reference.
Yeah, this little girl whose name is Melanie Merchant. She's a little crazy, and they're like, "Oh my god, the little girl was responsible, not Isaiah." And Sam gets this, like, he's like, "We need something that's, like, made of pure iron to stop her, like, just to protect ourselves for a little bit." And they're, like, freaking out, and then they find, like, this fireplace poker that's made of iron, and Sam swings it at her and she kind of dissipates for the time being. And they're like, oh my god, it was the daughter who was doing it all along. Isaiah was looking at her because he was like trying to warn people. He was like, that little girl is fucked up.
Yeah, he's like, oh, well, and he's been trying to warn people as well. And this was also the party episode where my partner Claire was watching with me, and Claire goes, okay, but what's the motive? Why is the girl fucked up? Why does she want to kill all these people?
We do have a reference to that later.
But it doesn't really explain why.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
But I digress. So they're also like, oh my god, well, the dad's spirit is now gone because we burned his bones. And he was probably holding her back. And now that he's gone, she is more powerful because she's, like, throwing, like, wind and shit. So Dean calls Sam and he's like, hey girlie, why are you guys are, like, locked in, what is going on? And Dean is like, I think you need to go, like, we need to figure out how to get rid of the daughter's spirit is doing it. And they're like, okay, but there's no body. And Sarah's like, okay, wait though, she had that antique doll. We do antique dealings. Sometimes in the past, like a long time ago, they would make dolls with, like, the hair of the actual child and make it in their image. So it's probably the hair on the doll. So Dean's like, wig, I'm going to go to the mausoleum and set that doll on fire. So he's, like, driving 100 miles an hour. The daughter, Melanie, reappears and starts fighting Sam. She, like, throws him against a wall, throws a table over him.
He's getting his ass kicked.
He's getting his ass beat. And she is walking up to Sarah about to, like, slit her throat. And then we cut to Dean at the mausoleum. This is a very funny scene because he is trying to bash the way that this is laid out is we see the girl's urn and then the doll is encased in a little glass chamber behind it. So Dean is trying to break this glass with, like, the butt of his gun, and he's like, oh my god, I can't do it. So he turns around and then he's like, come on, Dean, like, talking to himself. He's like, come on, Dean, and he shoots the glass. And it's
very funny.
Really funny. But he grabs the doll and he lights her hair on fire. And then we cut back to Sarah and Sam, and we see the girl's spirit burst into flames, and she is dispelled.
Right after Sam, of course, has like jumped in front of Sarah before that the little girl ghost was about to kill her. And of course, he's like jumped on top of her, and you're like, come on.
Yeah. So Dean calls, and he's like, hey, I just destroyed the doll. Are you guys all right? And Sam's like, yeah, I think so. And then hangs up, and I'm like, if I was Dean, I'd be like, can I please have, like, what happened? Can I please have some details? But anyway, then it's like they kind of have a little moment. And then we cut to the next scene, which is back at the auction house. And Sarah, Sam, and Dean are standing there, and Sarah is like, a bunch of guys, like a couple like guys, like movers almost, walk in, and they're holding the painting. And they're like, so what do you want us to do with this painting, ma'am? And she's like, take it out back and burn it. And they're like, really? She's like, I am serious. Go burn that fucking painting right now. And then Sam and Dean are like, oh, well, it was really nice to meet you. And she's like, yeah, Sam, it was really nice to meet you. And Dean's like, I'm going to go get in the car. You guys have a little conversation. And as Dean is walking away, he's like, wow, it's not like I'm the one who... He doesn't say this to them. He says it to himself. But he's like, it's not like I'm the one who... broke into the mausoleum and burned the hair and saved everyone. I don't get any thanks, but oh, okay, whatever. But then it's Sam and her, and they're having this conversation, and she's like,
when Dean's a mean little gay.
I know. But they're having this conversation, and Sam is like, well, it was nice meeting you. And she's like, well, see, I didn't actually get hurt in the end. I made it through, so just something to keep in mind.
He's like, yeah, this time.
Yeah. And then he's like, okay, well, bye. It was nice to see you. So she's kind of standing at the door watching them walk back to the car. And then Sam is like, he turns back to look at her. And he, like, runs back. And they start making out, like, right on the porch of this establishment. And Dean's like, that's my boy.
And I'm like, yeah, I would be like, I don't want to see that. If that was my sibling, I'd be like, I don't want to see that. There's another, this is an episode where you're like, do siblings actually act like this? Where Dean is like, yeah, you okay, brother? I'm like, I would never
you okay,
call my
little brother?
Little brother. And then he's like, yeah, get it, to his own brother. I'm like, I'd be like, okay, keep it to yourself.
Yeah, that's my problem. As someone who is an only child, I'm always like, if I had a sibling, I'd be like, what's going on, little sis or little bro? Like, that's how I would probably talk based on how shows have told me. I would never call my sibling by their name. Anyway, but then the episode ends, and it's assumed, like, Sam is trying to move along and, like, let Jessica go. And that's the end. So that is an episode. I feel like this is one that when you watch it, it's good, but as I'm describing it, it sounds more and more ridiculous. But it's like, it's very enjoyable.
It's heterosexuality is really kicking people's ass.
It is kicking their ass, unfortunately.
It introduces, I mean, it's hammering home the same kind of lore. And this one is almost like a, comedy of errors kind of thing of like, what are all the common ways to like kill the ghost or whatever, and they go through each one, and it's like rule of threes, like this one didn't work either.
Yeah, it is
actually quite funny.
I will say, where is Jared Padalecki's Emmy for the scene where he sees that they didn't actually burn the painting, and he's like, whoa, oh, that painting is so beautiful.
Oh my god. It's quite funny.
No, this episode, I think, these last two have been so good, and I know for a fact that the rest of this season is all bangers.
Yeah, from here on out, it's pretty oops all bangers.
Oops all bangers until the next season starts.
Thank you for listening. For more cursed supernatural content, you can follow us on social media at Mystery Spotcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also ask us cursed supernatural questions in our TikTok Q&A or by emailing us at themysteryspotcast@gmail.com. If you enjoyed listening to us suffer, please rate the show, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or Overcast, or tell a friend, create an MLM. And it really helps people discover our show. If you want to hear more from us, we're also two of the co-hosts of RuPalp Podrace, a queer Star Wars podcast. We've been covering the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and we have a lot of cool other stuff in store. So see you 2 Tuesdays from now for more slaying people, queer baiting things, the supernatural business.